This may well be the least interesting will it start video on YouTube. Stay tuned to find out more. Hello, my name is Carl. Welcome to my workshop and welcome to my YouTube channel. It's the return of the most boring man on YouTube, which in fact is actually a tribute to a man I greatly admire, the late great John Peel, who described himself as the most boring man on radio. So after a week of filling and masking and sanding, I'm ready to put some primer onto the mill column and base. And after several months of basically giving them a hard time, whoever painted this with a Hammerite, I'm going to have to try and do a better job than they did at least. Now, it is going to be a working machine. I've had to rein back my OCD and also my tendency to be a bit of a perfectionist. Not that perfectionist, not that you'll have noticed, of course, but you know, at the end of the day, if there's a bit I've missed, there's a bit I've missed, and I'm just going to have to crack on now and paint it and make some progress with it. I'm not going to film all of that, you'll be relieved to know, because it will be even more boring than usual. But what I'm going to try to do in this film is show you some of the electric motors for the mill. I actually converted them from star to delta and I've not tested them. And I might actually show you the innards as well and show you how I did that, because it was less straightforward than usual because the motors didn't have junction boxes on them. So I've got a couple of VFDs that aren't the ones I intend using for this machine when it's eventually all put back together, but they'll be good enough to test the motors, so we'll do that as well. Okay, let's crack on. So I'm handheld now, usual disclaimer. So this is what I'm using to paint the machine, Paragon enamel. So this is brushing grey primer, which goes on first, obviously. I'll put 2 coats of that on, and then we'll have 2 or possibly even 3 coats of Harrison Lathe blue gloss, which is the correct colour for this machine. So yeah, I'm not going to be painting orange or any other strange colours. It's going to be as it came out of the factory. I'm trying to do a faithful restoration, essentially. Now, the preparation wise, what I've done is I've filled any really gnarly bits in the casting. I may have missed some bits, as I said, but it is what it is now, and it's getting paint on it. It takes 16 hours for this to go off before you can put a second coat on it, so I may not get a second coat of primer on it today, but we'll see how we get on anyway. So yeah, we're ready to put some paint on. This has now been, as I say, it's been filled, it's been sanded down, it's been filled again once I sanded it down, just to touch up any bits that got knocked out or that I missed. And I've also now thoroughly hoovered it and degreased it so it's not dusty and it's not greasy, so we can begin painting. So we'll do that now. And as I said, a bit later on today, hopefully when I get this first coat on, we can start looking at some of these motors. So you're probably wondering why you're in this slightly odd rostrum position on the side of the mill. Well, as someone who bought their first house in the early 90s or the mid 90s, I am of course a child of the program Changing Rooms, and I've always wanted to do the classic Changing Rooms paint color reveal. So here you go. Oh, it was always a really outlandish color, wasn't it? But it isn't in this instance. So that is basically the brushing grey primer, but that color is more or less Harrison blue grey. It's almost the same. So that's what we'll be painting it in after the primer's gone off. The other thing I need to say is, using Harris brushes, because they don't shed their bristles, I am going to be brush painting this for better or for worse. Not really sure what the outcome's going to be, but we'll find out. It'll be good enough. I don't have the facilities, either the air compressor capacity or the facilities in here for spray painting, so I'm not going to be doing that. Overspray would be horrendous in here if I tried to spray it, and I don't know anything about spraying. I've got no skills in that department. I am the world's worst painter, but we'll see how we get on. The other thing I needed to tell you, there's all the ways on the machine. All they've had done to them is they've had a good clean up with Scotch-Brite, and then have run a stone over them just to take out the nicks and any damage, and they're all now masked off. So with that, let's get some of this on and see how it looks. I really do like this Paragon paint. I can't recommend it highly enough. It's really high build quality. and you know, it more or less, any blemishes, it fills them in itself, even just the primer. So if you do have a machine to paint, I can't recommend it highly enough. Not that they're sponsoring me, you understand. I'm just a very satisfied customer. So this stuff, obviously well ventilated space. It's got the picture of a dead fish on the side of it, so you don't want to be disposing of it in your friend's or your neighbour's koi carp pond. Just the usual precautions, really. So I'm going with a very thin coat to begin with, and we'll see how we get on. But I'll turn you off now because this isn't very interesting, is it? So that's the first coat of grey primer on. It's a bit of a milestone. It may not be much to you, but it is to me. And I now have a lot more sympathy for the individual who painted it all in Hammerite to begin with, I have to say. But that's it done, the first one. I've just put a thin coat on. I understand that is the received wisdom, just to put a thin coat on first. It's almost see-through in places, which I've been told is the way to do it. I don't know about this 16 hours. It does seem to be going off pretty quickly, so we'll have a check of it later this afternoon. I'm going to have some lunch now as a bit of a celebration for having painted the first main part of the mill. And then this afternoon, why don't we have a bit of fun with electric motors? Right, so lunch has been had. Roast chicken and stuffing sandwich. You're now in the rostrum position, as you can see, and this is the motor, the main motor, the drive motor from the mill. It is a Brook Crompton, made in Huddersfield, as you can see, maybe see from the plate there. BS 170. It's a good, probably I would say 60 years old. 400 to 440 volts, 3-phase, 3.3 amps, 2 horsepower, or 1.5 kilowatt if you prefer. Now what I've done to this motor is I've rewired it to delta to operate with a 240 to 240 3-phase inverter, or single phase to 3-phase inverter, and I've replaced the bearings on it. I've also given it a really good clean because this was absolutely filthy when I removed it from the machine. If I spin this round, you can see on the end it's a flange mount motor, and it bolts onto a plate that sits inside the base of the machine. Just got this piece of wood here to stop it from rolling around. Now what you can see quite clearly is that, like most electric motors, or unlike most electric motors, this one does not have your kind of junction box which has the 3 buzz bars in there that you can use to, or usually 6 buzz bars that you can use to change the way that the rotor is wired, or rather the stator is wired from star to delta. It's just got the 3 windings are just brought out to 3 terminals. So what that means is I had to go into this motor and rewire the stator itself to delta. And I'm going to show you how I did that, because I don't think there's an awful lot of information on the internet about how to do that. So I'll show you that now. And the way this motor comes apart is we've got these 4 7/16 nuts on the back, and we've got 4 long rods that run through to the front here. The first thing we've got to do is take this pulley off. So I'll get the motor in the vise so you can see it better and I can work on it, and we'll get this pulley off and we'll get the motor apart, and I'll show you how I changed the windings. Right, I know I said I was going to put the motor in the vise, but it doesn't fit. So I've got it on its end. We'll get this 5/32 grub screw out, or Allen key grub screw out of the pulley. I'll take it right out just to be on the safe side. Can you see what I'm doing? Yes, you can. So we'll take this grub screw right out. There it is. Little plastic box for all our bits. We'll get the puller on to the pulley. Puller onto the pulley. Now I know I said that I'd changed this motor over to delta, which I did, and I've got every reason to believe that I did that correctly. However, I've never actually run it. Look at that, that pulley's coming off by hand. I don't need the 5/8 socket to take that off. It's coming off beautifully. There we go. Yeah, so I've never actually run this motor because I didn't have an inverter, or obviously any 3-phase supply to test it. So we will see today a couple of years after I've modified it, or after I've made the wiring change, whether I did it correctly or not, because I've now got one of those fairly cheap inverters that you can get from, well, pretty much anywhere off the internet, eBay, Amazon. It's not the one I intend to use to run the motor in the machine when it's finally all back together, but it'll certainly do to give us a shot at running this and make sure it works properly. Right, so I'll bring you back when we've got the nuts off the bottom here and we can get the end cap off. Right, that's the nuts off underneath now, and as you can see, the top just comes off with the long rods attached to it. So we'll take that off, and that will just stand to one side like that. So what we have inside here is a brand new bearing that I installed, the wave washer, to give that some a little bit of preload. We have the rotor and the stator. So I'll bring you in and I'll show you the stator wiring a bit closer. Right, so here's the inside of the motor now. So we've got the rotor here. We've got one of the bearings that I replaced, that's a sealed for life one. The wave washer for the preload, as I mentioned before. This little shoulder on the shaft here is quite good because it stops you pushing the pulley on too far. And you can see the stator. And it was in a heck of a stator when I took this all apart. It was absolutely filthy. I ended up having to pressure wash it first outside. Obviously not internally. I pressure washed the exterior of the motor to get all the dirt off it, and oil and grease and goodness knows what else. 50 odd years worth of dirt on it. And then after I'd done that, I then washed it in solvent, and the solvent was absolutely black. Jet black when I'd finished cleaning it, and that was after I'd pressure washed the motor as well. So when you look inside these things, obviously you see the top, and sometimes it's at the other end, at this end. But in this case, it's at the front end of the motor, nominally the front end as we're looking at it here now. So we've got the ends of the stator windings here, and we can quite clearly see where I've connected the wiring up to the three terminal studs here. Now, initially when I took this apart, what I found was that, and what you'll always find in a star wound motor, is you'll see the connections to each of the windings, as you can see here, and three of them will be brought together into one point. And what people always say when you read forums about converting motors and this type of thing, and they always go on about digging out the star point, and you know, it makes it sound as if you have to kind of go in there and start digging it out like you're digging for potatoes in your back garden. It certainly isn't like that at all. It's a case of carefully removing the lacing cord that's often on these on the stator that's holding all the wiring in, carefully lifting out the star point, desoldering it, and then identifying the three windings, or the six conductors that make up the three windings, and then reconnecting them in the delta configuration. And if you're interested in that, what that actually is, I did a video a year or so ago now about the Steinmetz connection, and you can go back and have a look at that where I explain about star and delta. I'll put a link to that in the description of this video. But what you can see I've done here is try and bring you in a handheld, so usual disclaimer. Here you can see, look, where I've taken the windings from the stator and I've connected them each to an individual conductor, and also connected them together. So one side of each winding is connected to the next one, and then the 3 points, if you like, of the triangle of the delta formation are then brought out onto individual conductors into this junction box. So hopefully this will work. As I say, I've never tested it. I've obviously tested it with a multimeter. I've checked that my wiring was correct, but I've never actually run it. And as you can see, I've used tie wraps to put everything back in place and hold everything in. Have had people in the past say to me, why are you using tie wraps? Why don't you use lacing cord? Well, if these melt, then the whole motor will be on fire basically, so I'm not too worried about using tie wraps. They're absolutely fine, and they've altogether taken over from lacing cord in most applications. You can see a bit there, look, see, it's still there. So what we'll do is we'll get this end cap back on. We'll get the motor reassembled. I'll put the pulley back on it so we can see the shaft rotating easily. And we'll get this connected up to the little VFD that I've got. And we will give it a go and see if it works. Will it start? So I'm just tightening the nuts up now that secure the two ends of the motor together via those threaded rods, or those long rods. You can see here, look, this motor had grease nipples, or has grease nipples, and I put in the sealed bearings, so they're kind of redundant now, but I've left them on, and the bearings in this thing were absolutely shot, because unlike every other part of the machine that was full of grease, this definitely wasn't. And these little red caps that cover the grease nipples, they often get lost. They're often the first thing to go because people just forget to put them back on again. So the fact that they were there kind of tells me that it never had an ounce of grease in its entire working life. So yeah, that probably explains why the bearings were no good when I stripped it down. But they're good now, so we don't need to worry about that anymore. So we'll do these up. Last one, then I'll put the pulley back on, which came out very nicely. Just goes to show you how well I put that on in the first place. Nicely greased up. Right, they're all done up. Right, let's get this pulley back on. There's the key. I've got the key, I've got the secret. Look at that, lovely. Straight on there. Get the grub screw in. 5 to 30 seconds, so that is a quarter UNC, I believe. Right, I'll get it in there. There we are. Oh, he says, let's get it in. In she goes. Right, the next thing we're going to do is get a little VFD and fire this up and see if it starts. Right, so we're handheld again, just so I can show you what's going on with everything here. So what we have here is one of these AT series inverters, which are very cheaply available online in various different places. And there's an awful lot of information online about setting these up, so I'm not going to go into any great detail on that. What we've got here is the mains coming in, live, neutral and earth. Obviously it's currently unplugged, as you can see. Then we have UV and W connections, the 3-phase output. So that's a single phase input there from the mains. There's your 3-phase output, UV and W, corresponding to L1, L2 and L3, which go to this terminal block on the side of the motor. And I showed you inside just now that this is connected to the terminals, or rather the conductors inside there, when I rewired it to delta. So that goes to the ends of, or the 3 points of the delta connection for the windings in the stator. And this diagram here on the inside of the cover shows us A, B and C for the terminals, and L1, L2, L3, so we know how to connect it up. And so what we'll do now is we'll give it a go. As I say, I've not tested this yet, I've not run it. I've tested it with a multimeter, continuity-wise, resistance-wise. I am 99.9% certain that this is going to work, because I wired it up correctly in delta as far as I know. But you know what they say, there's only one real way to find out, and the proof of the pudding is in the eating, as they say. So let's give it some power. And it goes through a self-test initially, and then what we're seeing there is F00, which is the frequency. That actually is strobing. That's an artifact of the camera. It's not doing that to my eyes. So what we'll do now is then we'll get it fired up. So if I hit run now, with any luck this should start, and I've put an arrow on the pulley so we can see which way around it's going. So let me just pull back so you can see what's going on. I'm about to hit the run button now. So we'll fire up the potentiometer. We've got 0 hertz at the moment, and we should get this going. Well, you look at that. I obviously did it right. Right, I think it's going in reverse. Let's put it into forward. Yeah, let's go in the other way. And reverse again. And forwards. Yeah, I'm not going to increase the speed too much because of it sitting on the bench, but we'll see if we can speed it up a bit. And I don't want it to go flying off the bench, so we'll slow it down again. So we can definitely control the speed. I don't want that thing to take my head off, so we'll slow it down. And we'll stop it. So there you go. It started, it works. I won't be using that inverter. Oh, somebody's outside. I won't be using that inverter when it comes to it because obviously this green terminal block here gives you various different input and output functions, a potentiometer for controlling the speed, various different emergency stop options and buttons for start and stop and jog and so on. This doesn't have enough functionality to what I want, so I'll be getting a different one, but this was more than enough just to check it and make sure it was working, which it definitely is. So I'm very, very pleased about that. Well, that's the end of the film, people. I sincerely hope you've enjoyed it, and I'd like to say a big thank you for watching. And if you're not subscribed, please do subscribe to the channel. I think I'm sitting at about 100 away from 1,000 subscribers now, so I'm really looking forward to getting to that 1,000 subscriber point. I know it's not a big deal for the big channels, but it's a big deal for me. And thank you very much to everyone who's come along since the last video, all the new subscribers. It really does make my day when I get a new subscriber, and this is what I do it for. You know, you guys drive me and keep me going and inspire me to make more videos and hopefully better videos as well. So yeah, thanks very much for that. Now I'm traveling to work tomorrow, so that'll be me away for 4 weeks, so there'll be no more updates until I'm back. I might get another coat on the milling machine before I go, but I doubt it. So that'll wait a lot longer than 16 hours to get the next few coats on it. But hopefully we're moving in the right direction, and we'll make some more progress when I get back. Take care of yourselves, and I'll see you all soon.